Now, this week's episode of Angels of Death, I think, is one of the strongest directed episodes of the series to date. Out of its 10 episodes, there's been a lot of really interesting just choices made in order to really kind of show us that this building is wild. Sometimes things that we see might not really be there. But this episode, especially with how they handled the trial, I think is probably the best directed, or at least one of the best directed episodes of the series right now. What I really like is how we don't totally understand what's going on in this building. We do have ideas where things and how they can relate, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's hard to say, is this real or is this fake? Because we're constantly seeing like this gas seep into the room, so obviously Rachel is seeing things that aren't actually there, but it's sometimes hard to tell what is real and what is fake, and ultimately, like, are these ghosts, are these visions, are these characters not actually dead like we once thought? I really like that because it makes the anime and just experience overall much more fascinating, because when we're getting confused like probably the main character is, it helps sell the immersion a lot better. Something I really like with the trial is how it was directed in this almost not serious but almost comedic fashion. Like, there were so many moments just with how, you know, Eddie would pop up or other characters, and just the way they would shift around the camera, it almost felt like we were in some sort of comedy courtroom. But at the end of the day, we're kind of trying to judge, what is Rachel? Is she a witch? Does she deserve to get burned at the stake? Or is she a nice girl? With like each character, they switched around how they kind of presented them with Kathy, Eddie, as well as Danny. Like, they each had their own unique visual flair and how they would kind of really go into the character's mindset. And Rachel would still just be deadpan because ultimately she's like, I'm not a witch, I promise God, there's nothing else going on here. So each of the characters kind of have their own version of what they view Rachel as. Kathy very much upset that she kind of got screwed over. It's kind of interesting, but the episode drops a really interesting point where it says that back before, Danny used to counsel Rachel. So that makes me think that, like, Rachel's interaction with Danny when the anime started off, that wasn't the first time they met. It definitely seems like Danny and her had contact before the anime kicked off, meaning, like, was it an actual counsel session? Was this because something bad happened in her past? We do know something bad happened to her past based on past kind of like flashbacks, but how long of a contact have they actually had? Like, were they friends? Were they just, you know, counsel buddies? Like, so I find it kind of interesting that Danny, yeah, he's a psycho, but it definitely feels like him and Rachel have more of a connection than we might have first thought. It wasn't just like, obviously Danny wants her eyes because they're the perfect dead but alive eyes, but still, like, I'm curious how much of a connection Danny actually has after this episode. But I kind of like the trial overall because you're really seeing, like, this priest, even though he's probably has a few screws loose as well, he might be the most logical and maybe the most sane out of all the characters we're seeing. All these characters are going just head over heels what they want done, throw Rachel into spikes, have her, you know, get chopped up. Like, everyone has their own punishment in mind, but then ultimately he just decides, you know, based on what everyone says, you're a witch, you're gonna burn. Obviously, we still got like 6 episodes left of this series. She's not gonna die here, but I do like how people are starting to view Rachel as a witch because it really does make sense. A lot of how she acts, just her weird obsession to God, but at the end of the day, she clearly doesn't have an obsession to God. It makes sense to view her as a witch and that she is actually enchanted Zach with this sort of like pact that they made. It's interesting, just I'm really excited to see, like, is Zach going to come to the rescue? Is she going to escape herself? Is Danny going to free her? Like, exactly how is she going to get out of a situation that really feels hopeless because unless she jumps through the fire and puts herself out? That's going to be pretty interesting. Like, this episode's directing I thought was so cool because it starts off pretty much immediately showing you like, hey, yeah, like she's getting drugged up again. You're seeing that gas float in. She's falling through holes, hitting into coffins. Like, there's so much just weird shit going on. And then you get to that trial and it's directed in such a comedic fashion, but it's also kind of serious at the same time. And you're like, but I thought these characters were dead. Are they ghosts? Are they just visions in her mind? And I like that. I mean, it's kind of interesting how this building, one frame you're like, okay, this feels like reality, but then on the next frame you're like, this just doesn't feel real whatsoever. And I think that makes Angels of Death such a worthwhile experience because, like Rachel, you're not truly understanding what's going on. And when we finally do understand everything that's going on in this building, Rachel herself will also come to terms with whatever happened in her past. At least that's how I view everything that's going to happen. But yeah, I really like the voice acting in this one. I thought Kathy had a lot of good lines, same with Danny. Just the way their voice was fluctuating and the kind of like the way the animation would match the craziness that was going on. I really like how Danny was like, hey, how about you play the rest of that tape to Kathy? And then you see Kathy smile because Kathy was just full of shit. I love that so much. But overall, pretty fun episode, really strong directing, and pretty strong voice acting overall. I'm pretty excited to see how episode 11 and the remaining episodes are going to finish off this building and just how this is all going to end. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, and if you're new, also be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.